The Forbidden Question. The Galactic Assembly Hall stretched across 3 kilometers of crystallized starlight, its walls reflecting the collective consciousness of 1,000 civilizations. Representatives from every corner of the known galaxy gathered here monthly, their forms as diverse as the worlds they called home. Some floated in atmospheric bubbles, others required exoskeletons to withstand standard gravity, and a few existed as pure energy contained within geometric shells. At the center of this grand amphitheater stood the Circle of Unity, where each member species held a designated seat. These seats weren't merely furniture, but living monuments to their civilizations, pulsing with the unique energy signatures of their homeworlds. The Zephyrian seat glowed with swirling gases, the crystalline collective's throne sparkled with faceted light, and the Aquatic Federation's platform contained a miniature ocean. But one seat remained different. Draped in absolute darkness, it stood at the far edge of the circle, untouched and unmentioned for 300 standard years. No energy emanated from it. No holographic banner identified its owner, and no representative had ever claimed it. This was Earth's seat, and its emptiness had become the galaxy's most carefully guarded secret. Ambassador Crix of the Vortanian Empire had noticed this anomaly during her first assembly meeting 5 years ago. Young by galactic standards at only 2 centuries old, she possessed the curiosity that her elders had long since learned to suppress. Her species evolved from predatory hunters, valued directness and truth above diplomatic niceties. This trait had made her both an excellent investigator and a problematic diplomat. Today, as the Assembly discussed trade route expansions through the Nexus cluster, Crix found her attention drawn once again to that shrouded seat. The way other representatives carefully avoided looking at it, the subtle tension that filled the air whenever someone accidentally gestured in its direction, it all pointed to a mystery that begged to be solved. When the current speaker concluded their presentation, Crix rose from her crystalline perch, her 4 arms spread wide in the traditional gesture requesting recognition, her iridescent scales shifting to a bright purple that indicated urgent communication. Honored colleagues, she began, her voice carrying the harmonic undertones of her species. Before we proceed with the next agenda item, I must address an irregularity that has persisted in this assembly for centuries. The hall fell silent, not the comfortable quiet of attentive listening, but the heavy stillness of collective dread. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while others seemed to freeze in place. Crix turned slowly, deliberately, to face the draped seat. Why does Earth remain empty? Where are the humans? The reaction was immediate and visceral. The ethereal delegation's forms flickered with agitation. The silicon-based collective's crystalline bodies resonated with low-frequency vibrations of distress, and the eldest member of the assembly, a being known only as the Chronicler, actually stood for the first time in decades. Ambassador Crix, the Chronicler's voice echoed like wind through ancient caves. You speak of matters beyond your understanding. Earth's status is complicated. We do not discuss it. But why? Crix pressed forward, her hunter's instincts sensing weakness in the evasion. Every species in this galaxy has a recorded history, documented first contact protocols, and active representation. I searched our archives extensively. Earth's file contains only 3 words: classified. Maintain distance. The temperature in the hall seemed to drop several degrees. Representatives who moments ago had been engaged in animated discussions now sat in perfect stillness, as if afraid that any movement might draw unwanted attention. Senior Mediator Zenth, a being composed entirely of coherent plasma, pulsed with calming blue wavelengths. Young Ambassador, some knowledge carries a price too steep for curiosity. The matter of Earth was settled long before your species achieved spaceflight. Trust in the wisdom of your predecessors. Crix's scales shifted to deep red, indicating her growing frustration. Trust without understanding is not wisdom. It's willful ignorance. We pride ourselves on being an enlightened galactic community, yet we maintain this glaring blind spot. What are we so afraid of? "You don't understand," whispered Coordinator Velix of the Thought Weavers, their telepathic voice trembling with an emotion Crix couldn't identify. "They chose silence. We chose survival." Before anyone could respond, every screen in the assembly hall flickered. For just a moment, a symbol appeared. A blue sphere wrapped in white clouds, orbited by a single moon. Earth. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the image vanished, replaced by a single line of text in Universal Standard. Ingenuity. Protocol CVN activated. Maintain silence. The hall erupted in panic. Several delegates immediately initiated emergency transport protocols, vanishing in flashes of light. Others huddled together, emanating waves of fear strong enough to taste in the recycled air. The chronicler's ancient form seemed to shrink, becoming smaller and more fragile with each passing second. "What have you done?" Senior Mediator Zent's plasma form flickered between colors faster than Crix could track. "The protocols exist for a reason. Earth's silence protects us all." Crix stood her ground, though her own scales betrayed her uncertainty with rapid color changes. "Protects us from what? If humanity poses such a threat, why maintain their seat at all? Why not simply declare them enemies of the galaxy?" The chronicler's voice, when it finally came, sounded older than stars. "Because they are not our enemies, young one. They are our guardians, and the price of their protection was silence. Theirs and ours." The cryptic response only fueled Crix's determination. That night, while the assembly remained in emergency session, she retreated to her private quarters aboard her diplomatic vessel. Using her clearance as an ambassador, she began probing deeper into the restricted archives, following data trails that seemed to disappear and reappear like quantum phantoms. Hours passed before she found it, a fragment of a transmission, buried beneath layers of encryption that would have taken decades to crack without her security access. The message was brief, sent from Earth to the Galactic Council exactly 300 years ago. "To the United Galaxies Assembly. We have made our choice. The silence protocol is now in effect. Do not approach. Do not investigate. Do not remember. We do this not in anger, but in love. Not in fear, but in wisdom. The empty seat you maintain is not a symbol of absence, but of presence. We remain, always watching, always protecting. When the stars grow dark and the void hunger awakens, you will understand. Until then, we are the silence between your words, the shadow at the edge of your light. Remember only this: Earth chose to forget, so that you might live to remember." Final transmission, Human Collective, Soul 3. Crix read the message 3 times, each reading raising more questions than answers. The void hunger. Protecting from what? And how could silence itself be a form of protection? She was so absorbed in her discovery that she almost missed the soft chime of her communication system. An encrypted message had arrived, sender unknown. With trembling claws, she activated the display. "Ambassador Crix, your questions have not gone unnoticed. If you seek truth beyond the comfortable lies, meet us at the coordinates contained in this message. Come alone. Tell no one. The sons and daughters of Earth have not forgotten our duty, but perhaps it's time for one outside the silence to understand why we chose it. You have 12 standard hours to decide. After that, this opportunity closes forever. A friend in shadow." Crix stared at the message, her mind racing through possibilities. This could be a trap, a test, or genuine contact with humans, a species that supposedly hadn't communicated with the galaxy for 3 centuries. Every instinct warned her of danger, but her curiosity burned brighter than her fear. She began preparations immediately, knowing she would need a crew she could trust absolutely. Her first call was to Captain Drex, a former military officer turned independent trader who owed her several favors. His ship, the Stellar Wanderer, was fast, well-armed, and most importantly, operated outside official channels. Next, she contacted Dr. Melix, a quantum phase physicist whose theories about dimensional overlap had made him an outcast in academic circles. If Earth's silence involved technology beyond standard understanding, she would need his expertise. Her final recruit was perhaps the most crucial, Sage Viren of the Memory Keepers, one of the few beings old enough to remember the time before Earth's silence. Viren had always seemed troubled by gaps in the historical record, though they had never spoken openly about it. Within 6 hours, her team had assembled aboard the Stellar Wanderer. As they departed from the assembly station, Crix noticed several other ships discreetly following their trajectory before veering off into different hyperspace vectors. It seemed her questions had attracted attention from multiple parties. "The coordinates lead to the void margin," Captain Drex reported, his scared face showing concern. "That's dead space, Ambassador. Nothing out there but quantum static and ghost signals. No sane pilot flies those routes." "Which makes it the perfect place for a secret meeting," Dr. Melix interjected, his excitement barely contained. "The quantum interference would mask any technological signatures. Brilliant, really." Sage Viren remained silent during the journey, their ancient eyes closed in deep meditation. Only as they approached the designated coordinates did they speak, their voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate with the ship itself. "I remember now," Viren whispered. "The day Earth went silent. The sky itself seemed to mourn. And we chose to forget." How did we choose to forget? Before anyone could respond, proximity alarms blazed to life. Directly ahead, where their sensors showed only empty space, reality began to ripple like water disturbed by a thrown stone. A ship emerged from the distortion, sleek, dark, and utterly unlike any design in the known galaxy. Captain Drex's hands flew over his controls. Unknown vessel configuration. No visible weapons, but I'm reading energy signatures that don't match any known technology. They're hailing us. Crix straightened in her seat, her scales shifting to a neutral gray that indicated diplomatic readiness. "Open the channel." The view screen flickered to life, revealing a figure shrouded in shadows. Only their eyes were clearly visible, startlingly bright, intensely focused, and undeniably human. "Ambassador Crix," the figure spoke, their voice carrying a strange weight, as if each word had been carefully measured. "You sought the truth about Earth's silence. Are you certain you're prepared for the answer? Some knowledge cannot be unlearned. Some doors cannot be closed once opened." Crix met that penetrating gaze without flinching. "I've come too far to turn back now. The galaxy deserves to know why Earth chose isolation." The human's lips curved into what might have been a smile or a grimace. "The galaxy deserves many things, Ambassador, but deserving and surviving are often at odds." "Very well. Follow us. We'll take you to the threshold." The threshold. Dr. Melix leaned forward eagerly. "What is that?" "The place where silence begins," the human replied. "And where, if you're not careful, everything else ends." The mysterious ship turned, its engines flaring with an impossibly bright light that seemed to bend space around it. As the Stellar Wanderer followed, Crix couldn't shake the feeling that she was crossing more than just a physical boundary. Behind them, the familiar stars of the galactic core grew dim, while ahead lay only darkness and the promise of a truth that had remained hidden for 300 years. Whatever awaited them at this threshold, Crix knew with certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. The journey into the unknown had begun, and with it, the first crack in the wall of silence that had protected the galaxy for centuries. Beyond the veil of silence, the human ship led them deeper into the void margin, where the very fabric of space seemed to fray at the edges. Stars became scarce, then vanished entirely, leaving only the faint glow of their guide's engines against absolute darkness. The Stellar Wanderer's instruments grew increasingly erratic, displaying readings that defied physics as the crew understood it. "We're moving through folded space," Dr. Melix announced, his voice filled with awe. "The humans aren't just traveling through the void. They're navigating between dimensional layers. This technology is centuries beyond anything in our database. Captain Drex gripped his controls tighter as turbulence shook the ship. Whatever they're doing, it's putting serious strain on our systems. Hull integrity holding. But I don't know for how long. Sage Viren had moved to the observation port, their ancient eyes reflecting something none of the others could see. The darkness here is alive, they murmured. It watches, it waits, it hungers. Before anyone could question this cryptic observation, reality itself seemed to tear open before them. A massive structure materialized from nowhere, a sphere of impossible size, its surface covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. It pulsed with dark energy, seeming to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. By the void, Crix breathed. What is that? The human ship's transmission crackled through their speakers. Welcome to Threshold Station, Ambassador, the last outpost of humanity and the first line of defense against the dark hunger. Prepare for docking. As they approached, the true scale of the station became apparent. It could have contained entire planets within its superstructure. Docking ports opened like wombs in its surface, revealing interiors that seemed to extend infinitely in directions that shouldn't exist. Once aboard, Crix and her team were met by their mysterious contact. The shadows fell away, revealing a human woman in a uniform that seemed to absorb light. Her eyes held depths of knowledge and sorrow that made even Sage Viren look young by comparison. I am Commander Elena Vasquez. She introduced herself, current custodian of the Silence Protocol. Before we proceed, you must understand, what you're about to learn will fundamentally alter your perception of reality. There's still time to turn back. Crix's scales flickered with determination. We've come for the truth, Commander, whatever the cost. Elena nodded slowly. Then follow me, and prepare yourselves. She led them through corridors that defied geometry, past view screens showing vistas of space that couldn't possibly exist. Other humans moved past them with purpose, all wearing the same light-absorbing uniforms, all carrying the same weight in their eyes. They entered a vast chamber dominated by a holographic display of the galaxy. But this wasn't the familiar spiral of stars they knew. Dark tendrils wound through the galactic arms, pulsing with malevolent life. Entire sectors showed as gray zones, marked with ominous symbols. 300 years ago, Elena began, her voice echoing in the chamber. Humanity made first contact with something that shouldn't exist. We were exploring the quantum substrate, pushing the boundaries of physics, when we found it. Or rather, it found us. The hologram shifted, zooming in on a region of space that looked wounded, as if reality itself had been torn open. Within that wound, something moved. A darkness that seemed conscious, hungry, and infinitely patient. We call it the dark hunger, Elena continued. It exists between dimensions, feeding on consciousness itself. Every thought, every communication, every quantum transmission creates ripples that it can follow. The more a civilization advances, the more it broadcasts its presence, the more attractive it becomes as prey. Dr. Melik stepped forward, his scientific mind struggling with the concept. Are you saying this entity feeds on sentient thought? Not just feeds, Elena corrected. It consumes entirely. Worlds touched by the dark hunger don't die. They cease to have ever existed. It doesn't just erase the present and future, but reaches back through quantum causality to unmake the past. We've calculated that the galaxy should have 3 times as many civilizations as currently exist. The missing ones, consumed so thoroughly that even their absence isn't remembered. The implications struck the team like physical blows. Captain Drex was the first to speak. If communication attracts this thing, then the Galactic Assembly, with all its quantum networks and instantaneous translations, is the largest beacon in the galaxy. Elena finished, a feast waiting to be devoured. Humanity discovered this truth through horrible experience. We lost 12 colony worlds before we understood what we were facing. Not destroyed, erased. Billions of lives that suddenly never were. Sage Viren's voice trembled as ancient memories surfaced. The vanishing years. We call them glitches in the historical record. Entire civilizations that our archives said should exist, but didn't. We assumed it was data corruption. Your instincts were partially correct, Elena said softly. But the corruption wasn't in your data. It was in reality itself. The dark hunger had been feeding on the galaxy for millennia, growing stronger with each consumption, becoming better at erasing its own tracks. The hologram shifted again, showing Earth surrounded by an intricate network of defensive structures. When we understood the threat, humanity made a choice. We could warn the galaxy, potentially creating panic that would generate the very quantum noise that attracts the dark hunger. Or we could act. The silence protocol, Crix whispered, understanding beginning to dawn. Elena nodded. We severed all communication with the galaxy. Not just physical silence. We developed technology to create quantum static fields, dimensional barriers, consciousness dampeners. We made ourselves invisible to the dark hunger by ceasing to exist in any meaningful way on the quantum level. But that's not all, she continued, gesturing to the station around them. We became sentinels. This station and others like it form a barrier between the dark hunger and the galaxy. We've spent 3 centuries developing weapons that can wound it, barriers that can contain it, sacrificing our own advancement to buy the galaxy time. The team stood in stunned silence as the magnitude of humanity's sacrifice became clear. They had given up their place in galactic civilization, their technological advancement, their very identity, all to stand guard against a threat the rest of the galaxy couldn't even comprehend. Why didn't you just destroy it? Captain Drex asked, his military mind seeking the direct solution. Elena's expression darkened. Because it can't be destroyed. It exists outside our dimensional framework. Attacking it directly only makes it stronger, feeds it the very energy we use against it. The only defense is denial. Denying it targets, denying it pathways, denying it the quantum resonance it needs to manifest. She led them to another view screen, this one showing the galactic assembly from an external perspective. Your civilization's quantum networks grow more complex every year. Your communications become more sophisticated, your technology more advanced. And with each advancement, you shine brighter in the quantum realm. You're approaching critical resonance, the point where the dark hunger will no longer be able to ignore you. How long? Crix asked, though she dreaded the answer. At current progression, 50 standard years, perhaps less. That's why some of us argued for breaking silence, for warning you. But others, Elena's voice trailed off. Others fear that the warning itself would trigger what we're trying to prevent. Sage Viren completed, their ancient wisdom finally finding context for long-held suspicions. Exactly. So we've maintained the protocol, watching, waiting, hoping the galaxy would develop its own understanding before it's too late. Your questions, Ambassador Crix, represent both our greatest hope and our deepest fear. The hologram changed once more, showing a web of connections between various points in the galaxy. There are others like you, beings who've noticed the inconsistencies, who've questioned the silence. We've been monitoring them, trying to decide when the risk of revelation becomes less than the risk of continued ignorance. And you decided that time is now? Crix asked. Elena's expression was unreadable. I decided that someone needed to understand the choice we made. Whether that understanding spreads further, that decision rests with you. She gestured to a sealed door at the far end of the chamber. Through there is our deepest secret, a direct view into the quantum substrate where the dark hunger dwells. Seeing it will change you fundamentally. Some who've looked have gone mad. Others have dedicated their lives to the silence protocol. None have ever been the same. The team exchanged glances. They'd come seeking truth, but now that truth seemed more terrible than any of them had imagined. Yet Crix knew they couldn't turn back. The galaxy's future might depend on what they chose to do with this knowledge. Show us, she said firmly. Elena placed her hand on a biometric scanner. The door unsealed with a hiss, revealing a chamber that seemed to exist outside normal space. At its center was a viewing portal, not a screen or window, but a tear in reality itself. As they approached, the temperature dropped precipitously. Frost formed on the walls despite the station's climate controls. And through the portal, they saw it. The dark hunger was not a creature in any sense they understood. It was an absence that moved. Avoid that thought, a hunger given form. It existed as fractal shadows that folded in on themselves infinitely, each fold revealing new depths of emptiness. To look at it was to feel pieces of oneself being eroded, memories becoming uncertain, identity itself starting to fray. But worse than its appearance was the sensation of being noticed. The moment they peered through the portal, the dark hunger turned its attention toward them. Not physically. It had no body to turn. But they felt its awareness like ice water in their veins, its interest like hooks in their minds. Captain Drex staggered backward, his face pale. It sees us. By all that's holy, it sees us. The portal is shielded, Elena assured them, though her own voice shook slightly. It can sense observers but can't locate them precisely. This momentary attention won't draw it to us. But now you understand why even thinking about it too clearly is dangerous. Dr. Melix had fallen to his knees, equations streaming through his mind as he tried to comprehend what he was seeing. It's not just interdimensional, he gasped. It's anti-dimensional. It doesn't just exist outside our reality. It negates reality itself. How do you fight something that makes existence itself uncertain? With sacrifice, Elena replied quietly, with vigilance, and with silence. She sealed the portal, and the oppressive presence faded, though its memory lingered like a stain on their consciousness. The team stood in shaken silence, each processing the revelation in their own way. Finally, Sage Viren spoke, the empty seat in the assembly. It's not empty at all, is it? Elena smiled sadly. No, humanity is there at every session, watching, protecting, maintaining the balance. Our absence is our presence. Our silence is our voice. But why maintain the facade? Crix demanded, her scales flickering with frustration. Why not tell the truth and let the galaxy prepare? Because preparation itself would doom you. Elena explained patiently. The quantum signatures generated by a galaxy-wide mobilization against the dark hunger would be like firing a beacon directly at it. The only preparation that works is the kind that doesn't appear to be preparation at all. She led them back through the station to their ship, but before they departed, she handed Crix a small device. This is a quantum communicator, shielded by our best technology. It will allow you one transmission back to us, but only one. Use it wisely. As the stellar wanderer prepared to depart, Elena offered one final revelation. The silence protocol has phases. We're currently in Phase 7, observation and containment. Phase 8 would involve limited contact with selected individuals. Phase 9. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Phase 9 is direct intervention. We pray it never becomes necessary. What triggers Phase 9? Crix asked. The day the dark hunger breaks through our barriers, Elena replied. The day silence is no longer enough. On that day, humanity will return to the galaxy not as members, but as warriors in a battle most won't even understand they're fighting. The journey back to known space was subdued. Each member of the crew grappled with knowledge that felt too large for their minds to contain. They'd sought the truth about Earth's silence and found a reality more complex and terrifying than any of them had imagined. As they approached the Galactic Assembly Station, Crix faced the hardest decision of her life. She held in her hands information that could reshape galactic civilization or destroy it. The quantum communicator felt heavy in her palm, its single use weighing on her like the fate of worlds. What will you do? Captain Drex asked quietly. Crix stared at the familiar stars of home, now seeing them differently. Each point of light represented a civilization unconsciously dancing on the edge of annihilation, protected only by humanity's silent sacrifice. I don't know, she admitted. How do you choose between comfortable ignorance and terrible knowledge? How do you decide whether truth or silence better serves survival? Sage Viren placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. Perhaps that's why the humans chose you for this revelation. Not because you would immediately know what to do, but because you would struggle with the choice. Easy answers rarely serve complex truths. As they docked at the assembly station, Crix made her decision. She would return to the assembly, resume her duties, and watch. She would observe her fellow representatives with new eyes, looking for signs of readiness, measuring the galaxy's maturity against the terrible knowledge she now carried. The quantum communicator went into a secured vault, its single transmission held in reserve. She would know when the time was right, when silence had protected them as long as it could, when the comfortable lie became more dangerous than the uncomfortable truth. The empty seat would remain draped in shadow, its occupant present in absence, vigilant in silence. And Crix would carry the burden of knowing why, understanding at last that some forms of protection come disguised as abandonment, and some forms of love require the courage to remain unacknowledged. The galaxy continued its ancient dance, unaware of the predator that stalked between dimensions or the silent guardians who held it at bay. But now there was one more who knew the truth, one more who understood the price of peace. And in that understanding, perhaps, lay the first hope for a future where humanity's sacrifice might finally end, and the silence might one day be broken not in catastrophe, but in triumph. The assembly hall felt different when Crix returned. The empty seat no longer seemed abandoned but watchful. The shadows that draped it no longer felt like neglect, but like purposeful concealment. She took her place among her peers, wearing her knowledge like invisible armor, and began the long vigilance that humanity had maintained for 3 centuries. Somewhere in the void between spaces, the dark hunger stirred, eternal and patient. But between it and the glittering lights of galactic civilization stood the silent sentinels, holding the line with a dedication born of love for a galaxy that didn't even know they were there. The truth about Earth's silence had been revealed, but its power lay not in the knowing, but in the choosing, the daily decision to protect through obscurity, to serve through absence, to love through letting go. And so the silence continued, deeper now for being understood, stronger for being shared, a shield of quietude against the hunger of the void.